And we're live.
Very good. I call to order today's regular council meeting of the Township of Monaghan on this Monday, March 21st. I'd ask for approval of the agenda. Deputy Mayor Graham, seconded by Councillor Huntley. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Huntley.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
Councillor Shaw.
Yes.
Councillor Belch.
Yes.
And Mayor McFadden.
Yes, motion is approved. I'd ask that any members of council declare any pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof now or when the situation arises. I'm going to declare on item 7.1 with regards to Milton District Minor Hockey, as my son is a member of that organization. Any other declarations? Okay, seeing none, there is no closed session. So our first presentation, item 6.1, is Alyssa Luma from Meridian Planning, proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment regulating cannabis in the Township of Monaghan. So I will turn it over to Alyssa. Madam Clerk, if you could let her in. I see she's there.
Allison has joined us, Mayor McFadden.
Oh, sorry about that. Just realized I was on mute. Hello, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So what we're doing today, it is just an update on where we are at with the official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and site plan bylaw for cannabis. Next slide, please. So the last that you saw this particular file, we brought forward some draft documents to you in December for consideration and for information. But just to back up a little bit, because it has been some time, the planning process to date really has started back with our initial report to you in 2020. We then had a subsequent addendum to that report in September of 2021. And then in the fall, we went forward to the public with a public open house in October, and then the statutory meeting on December the 20th, where we brought forward the draft documents. And we followed up with a subsequent statutory public meeting in January of this year. Next slide, please. So just to recap, we have now worked as a result of some of this public consultation that we've received and the comments received. We have made some slight modifications to the official plan amendment, although not to the zoning bylaw amendment or to the site plan bylaw. But just to recap what that was being brought forward in December, we are proposing that a cannabis production facility be permitted as of right in the employment designations of the official plan, both urban and rural, and in the agricultural and rural areas, and including the Oak Ridges Moraine designations of the official plan, subject to a zoning bylaw amendment and subject to a 300-meter minimum separation distance from surrounding sensitive land uses. So once again, having this permitted as of right in the official plan designations is not enough for these uses to establish. They do still need a zoning bylaw amendment, and they do still need to go through the site plan control process. Outdoor cultivation of cannabis, which is quite literally crops, we are proposing that that be permitted as of right in the agricultural and rural areas and those corresponding Oak Ridges Moraine ag and rural areas as well. The 300-meter minimum separation distance would equally apply in this scenario from other surrounding sensitive land uses. Next slide, please. There we go. So the official plan policies establish the blanket framework for cannabis uses in the township. The policies address a number of issues, and broadly speaking, those are the mitigation of adverse effects, including noise, odor, dust, and light. No outdoor storage would be permitted in conjunction with such issues. They would only be permitted in new purpose-built buildings. That's in the case of a cannabis production facility, which is an indoor facility. Would also be subject to site plan control. And the official plan policies identify a number of criteria to be considered prior to any municipal approval for such uses, and these address such things as environmental impacts, servicing, waste management, parking, and traffic. They also identify a set of minimum required studies which must accompany any zoning bylaw amendment application or site plan application. It's worth noting that in your official plan, in section 8 towards the back, the municipality already has a whole list of studies that they may require as part of a complete application. And in this case with cannabis, what we're doing is we're identifying a set of minimum studies that are required and they must accompany those applications going forward. Next slide, please. So this is where we have made some modifications to the draft documents. As you will see them coming forward, I understand there's a staff report that will be coming forward subsequently in early April, and you will see some modifications here. Where we had previously in the December version of the documents referenced an odor management plan, we have changed that terminology to be a little bit more broad, to be an air quality study. And we have included the requirements in the policies that the proponents would be required to assess potential airborne and odor impacts, including the additional requirements for a contingency odor mitigation plan. Now, this is something that we heard strongly in December from the public. And this addresses that scenario where the use is established, and subsequent to that happening, perhaps things are not being regulated as well as they could, and there are some impacts that are happening that were unintended or unaccounted for. So this is where this new policy would kick in. And I've actually provided it for you here. So the proponent of the proposed cannabis production facility shall also submit a contingency odor mitigation plan prepared by a licensed professional engineer that considers additional air filtration systems and provides for additional mitigation measures in the event of substantiated future complaints after the use has been established. The conditions that would trigger the additional mitigation measures will be established as part of the site plan control process. So what this new policy in the official plan does is, before final approval is given for the use, the cannabis use, it is establishing what triggers would require that additional action be taken and what that next course of action would be. And the proponent would enter into an agreement with the township to that effect at that site plan level. Next slide, please. Similarly, we have also done that for a light mitigation plan because those were the two impacts that we heard most strongly that there was concern for. This is based on approaches that have been used in other municipalities that have developed recently. So we have brought them forward to Kevin Monahan. And as it relates to a light mitigation plan, that would be addressed as part of a land use compatibility assessment, which is already something that is required in the official plan as one of those potential studies that could be required as a complete application. And this policy really mirrors what I just read to you for the odor situation. But so a light mitigation plan, again, as prepared by a licensed professional engineer, shall fully describe the proposed light mitigation measures and demonstrate that the proposed cannabis production facility will not cause light pollution, including sky glow or light trespass onto neighboring properties. In addition, the proponent will also submit a contingency light pollution mitigation plan prepared by a licensed engineer that provides for additional mitigation measures in the event of substantiated future complaints after the use has been established. Conditions that would trigger the additional mitigation measures will be established as part of the site plan control process. So again, prior to any final approval for the cannabis use, there will be an agreement entered into with the town where the triggers will be identified and the subsequent course of action would also be identified in the event that there is cause to revisit some of those remedies. Next slide, please. The zoning bylaw amendment has not changed in terms of what you saw in December, but really just by way of summary. A cannabis production facility is only permitted subject to a zoning bylaw amendment. The current as of right permission for cannabis production facilities will be deleted from the zoning bylaw. It's currently permitted as of right in the Millbrook employment area. Any existing uses will be recognized as legal non-conforming. So if there is a use within that Millbrook area now, it does continue to be legal. It is grandfathered in. Outdoor cannabis cultivation will be added as of right in the agricultural zone, rural zone, and the Oak Ridges Moraine countryside zone. And that literally is just the crops. Next slide, please. And again, just generally in summary, so currently cannabis is addressed through section 11.7 of the zoning bylaw. That section of the bylaw will be deleted in its entirety and will be replaced with a new set of regulations, which address a number of items. Only the uses of a single license holder will be permitted on any single lot. Other than cultivation, all other cannabis uses may only occur in a wholly enclosed building. Cannabis production facilities, which are the indoor ones, will only be permitted in new purpose-built buildings. The zoning bylaw will now contain lot and setback requirements. No outdoor storage will be permitted. There are minimum parking and loading requirements that will be introduced. A cannabis production facility will not be permitted on a lot with a bed and breakfast, an agritourism use, home business, or home industry. No accessory sale of cannabis or related products is permitted, and this will be subject to site plan control. So keeping in mind again that these uses will only be permitted, the indoor ones, by zoning bylaw amendment only. So through that amendment process, there will be an opportunity to apply these zoning regulations, but also in a very site-specific way to look at what is appropriate in that site-specific scenario. Next slide, please. Again, site plan control has not been changed from what we brought forward in December. And the reason that was necessary is that we needed to amend that site plan control bylaw to specify that any buildings or structures associated with a cannabis operation are not exempt from site plan control, that they must go through that process. Next slide, please. And this slide was actually included at the time we thought perhaps the staff report and this presentation would be coming through in tandem, but at this point in time, with the modifications that have been made to the documents, which you will see in April, we are recommending approval of that trio of documents. And with that, if you have any questions.
Very good, thank you very much. Quick question, the one slide indicated that any existing production facility in the Millbrook area, that it would be grandfathered forward. Are we aware of any, and how do we ensure that someone's not going to claim the grandfathering once we put this into place? Is there something to identify? I'm not aware of any, and I just don't know how we actually apply that.
This may be a question better answered by staff than me, but my understanding is there may be one such facility in the Millbrook area. And in that case, what is there now would be recognized as legal non-conforming. However, if there was any request to expand that facility, that would be subject to all of the new zoning provisions that came into play.
Very good. Mr. Conley, I see your camera's on. Go ahead.
Through your worship to council, I'm not aware of any one particular one. I will go make sure that there isn't one, but within, as it stands now, I'm not aware of one, but we'll make sure that before this comes forward at the next council meeting, that if that is the case, we'll provide that information.
Very good. Excellent. And is there something that they would have to notify us? Because with our current bylaws, it's already part of it, so they didn't necessarily have to come forward. My only concern is individuals or companies coming forward 6 months, 9 months from now saying, no, I was in place prior to this bylaw coming forward. Is there something that we can do to ensure that there is not the artificial grandfathering clause brought forward?
We'll make sure that that's the case, and I'll make sure the report specifically specifies that one, if there are any, and if they are, if there's a situation, and if not, I'll make sure the report says that too.
Wonderful. And I see a couple hands up. I'm going to go to Councillor Shaw and then Councillor Huntley. Go ahead, Councillor Shaw.
You're on mute, Bill.
Then if I fix that, here we go. Thank you. Okay, one of my, I have two issues. One of them is the distance from rural residences. I just didn't notice anything different from the 300 meters. And I thought if there was a rural residence, that perhaps a 500 meter might be more appropriate. Having been near one of these facilities, the scent does carry very well. And it's not really what you'd consider pleasant. So, and I understand that they're going through all kinds of issues to make them be less odoriferous, but even at that, a greater distance would help. My second concern is these businesses tend to be transient. I know this is not a positive way to look at it, but I've heard through others that many of these cannabis strongholds start and they go like blazes and they earn somebody a ton of money for about 3 to 5 years, and then next thing you know, they evaporate. And I was wondering if there's a possibility of having them create a financial incentive for demolition of their structures, because what they leave behind is really rarely useful for anything else. Okay, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Shaw. And I will look to Allison and to John to follow up with both of those. Thank you.
Sure. I can address the 300 meter setback. There is a policy in the official plan amendment that provides that 300 meters may be increased or decreased. It can be adjusted as the site-specific condition may exist. So that 300 meters is a minimum at this point in time, but if an application comes forward and all of the requisite studies are done in support of that application, those studies would then be peer reviewed on behalf of the township as appropriate. And if the conclusion is that really 300 meters is not enough, then there is a policy within that official plan amendment that provides that 300 meters can be extended to be whatever the science dictates is a better number.
Very good. And the second one, I see Mr. Connolly's got his camera on. Go ahead.
There. I was going to answer in terms of the first one. I was going to build on what Allison had indicated. On the second one, in terms of being transient, I think again the intention here is, and perhaps Allison can do more because she has experience from other jurisdictions. But the intention here is that given the process, that it's significant. A lot of money, time, effort has to be laid out in terms of going through the planning process, being there, available, also having scrutiny not only from the public and anyone who's interested, but on top of that council. I suspect this is more for the things that are more, I guess, less transient, more legal and more durable, but perhaps Allison can add to that answer.
Yes, so absolutely, Mr. Connolly is correct. So the documents that have been put together and the framework that's been established going forward here has been designed to be as transparent as possible. So that is in terms of what is being proposed through the municipality and to the public, but also accountability. So in particular, with the number of studies that are required, and because it's only through a zoning bylaw amendment process that automatically kicks it into a planning act and a public process, there is a significant investment and commitment that would be needed on the part of these proponents that I think would also dissuade a lot of that transient type activity.
Very good. Thank you, Allison and John. Councillor Huntley, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. And I guess on slide 10, I think I asked this question last time, and maybe I didn't get an answer that I was satisfied with, or I'm just not not registering. But the concept of not allowing another home-based business or home-based industry on the same lot, that one's still, I'm still confused on that one, on why that's a criteria.
And I think just for clarity, it's slide 8, but it's agenda page 10. So I don't think this is the slide you're looking at right now, Councillor Huntley, right? That's
correct. Yeah.
Correct. Okay. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I understand that, you know, you don't want the bed and breakfast or some sort of agritourism piece there, but the home business one kind of still baffles me. I mean, like there can be more than one partner on a lot, you know, and if, you know, one partner is, you know, growing marijuana, and the other partner has a home quilting business or a home tax service, like, have we just eliminated that possibility? Like, or am I, like, that's my question. Like,
Okay,
is that-
yeah. Yeah. So the zoning that is being put forward is the standard framework that will appear in the zoning bylaw as supported by the official plan policies. But again, we have required that any new cannabis operation may only be established by way of a zoning bylaw amendment process. So given how broad home occupations may be, and given that they have their own set of zoning requirements in your general provision, that is why within that standard set of zoning requirements, we're saying not in conjunction with a home occupation or home business because the potential is so broad. But because this must only go through a zoning bylaw amendment process, there is the opportunity to address that on an individual site-specific basis moving forward.
Oh, sorry, through you, Chair. But what happens if the cannabis business is established, and then somebody wants to start a home-based business? Like, are they going to have to go through now another zoning change in order to enable that?
That would be a minor variance process that they would need to go through with the township, where they would have to provide details on what that home-based business was, what it involved. Does it involve customers coming out to the property, like somebody having their hair done? Does it involve somebody only working from home off a desk? So they would have to provide details through that variance process as to what the activities of that home occupation would be that they were proposing.
And I guess through you, Chair, again, sorry, on the same topic, I'm still kind of scratching my head on this one. is what is it we're trying to do here?
So just for clarity, because I'm struggling on this one too. Just for clarity, are you referring specifically to an on-farm diversified use, or are you referring to the neighboring property who may now be limited on what they can do on their property because you've got a neighboring cannabis operation, or both?
Well, I think this is specific to the lot where the cannabis is not a neighboring property.
Okay, so it's the on-farm diversified use,
Right.
as an example? Okay, all right.
So in this case, there are policies in the official plan for on-farm diversified uses in terms of the criteria that they would need to meet to demonstrate that they are an on-farm diversified use, and those are consistent with the provincial requirements. What we're talking about are home occupations and home-based businesses that are in no way related to the farm or the cannabis use.
So I think to your point, I'm still struggling here too, Councillor Huntley. So I think to your point, and we'll use an example. They move ahead, they do their OPA in order to do the cannabis on the farm, and then sometime down the road they decide they want to do a bed and breakfast within that house that's on the farm. And your concern is, Councillor Huntley, that then you would require a minor variance or something now, subject to the fact that you've got cannabis on site. Is that where we're heading?
I think the bed and breakfast is probably a little bit more on the extreme side. I'm thinking more of, if I'm going to be an income tax preparer or a bookkeeper or something to that effect. I mean, to me, I'm having a hard time why we would restrict that so tightly and force them through a process. Like, I don't understand what we're trying to accomplish. Like, what is the point of regulating that so tightly?
So I guess use a different example potentially that would be more obvious would be if you've got a cannabis operation, you've gone through this process and it's fine on the farm, and then at the residence on that farm, you want to open up, for example, a daycare. And so that would conflict with the use of the cannabis in close proximity. Does that?
You keep picking pretty extreme examples there, Mayor.
Well, no, it usually, I'm trying to get to black and white as opposed to gray. I'm hoping that I can shed some light on this. Allison?
Yes, so perhaps this can help a little bit in terms of what the nature of these uses look like. So there is a security issue here also. So cannabis operations, they must have fencing. A lot of the fencing has barbed wire across the top of it. These are all conditions of the cannabis license that's issued through Health Canada. So there's a definite security issue. They must have security cameras operating and running on the property at all times. Many of these have security huts in the front of them. These are not mom and pop type operations. So there's a real and true bona fide security concern here. which is why if you're proposing a home-based business, and keep in mind, these are our standard zoning regulations that apply across the board. So at this point in time, we can't specify all the different potential one-offs. It's almost impossible to imagine what every home occupation may or may not be. So what we're putting in place now is our standard thresholds. And then through that zoning bylaw amendment process, if on a specific property, something could be deemed appropriate, that can either be addressed through the zoning bylaw amendment process upfront for the cannabis facility, or as a result of opening a business or operating a business, the cost of operating that business is the minor variance, where that consideration is given to what is the business, what does it entail, what are the activities, what are the security impacts. That scrutiny is given to that through the minor variance process.
Councillor Huntley?
I still think we're overreaching on this one, but it's just my opinion.
Deputy Mayor Graham? Shed some light on this one, or you got a new question?
Oh, boy. Yeah, thanks. Well, I kind of understand where we're going to and where we're coming from. But I think that if it is overly prescriptive, we could always revisit elements of that at a future date and go from there. But, I understand that I wasn't aware of some of those federal conditions, and it does make sense. And I think it is a bit overly prescriptive. I can see certain scenarios that would make sense, but I think there are measures by which we can revisit those unique circumstances and potentially accommodate or loosen things after the fact. But, we've been working 2 years on this, on this work, and we need to get something in place and then figure it out and adjust it as need be. My questions were more around the subjects of the air quality study and the light mitigation plans. With regards to some of the language in the presentation about, I'm very happy to see that both of these plans are requiring sort of an engineered and, obviously scientifically informed due diligence on behalf of the proponent. But I guess I'm just kind of concerned for one of two things. What conditions or, is an engineer going to be able to create and provide such a report? And are we going to have, as a municipality, the expertise in this sort of, newly established science and evolving science and issues to evaluate whether or not it's appropriate or sufficient or not? And so that's sort of my concern is, these are sort of with regards to the air quality. I mean, there's a plan that could potentially be invoked if there's a certain threshold of complaints or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's all well and good. But I don't know if I have the confidence to suggest that the plan is going to fully address the issues that are identified potentially after the fact. So I'm just looking for a little more comfortability from the consultant as to how those measures or plans can be held to an appropriate standard to provide the intended results.
Sure. So these policies, they were developed in conjunction with Phil Gerard, who is an engineer who specializes in air quality and in particular odor issues for cannabis specifically. He has assisted us in other municipalities where we have been addressing this issue. In terms of what those particular triggers would be and what they would be looking from for a technical perspective, quite honestly, is outside of my area of expertise. But I think that perhaps, Mr. Connolly, that is something that we could endeavor to provide when the staff report comes forward, that we could provide some of that additional background.
If I can, through your worship to Councillor Deputy Mayor Graham, is that the report has an attachment, and that we actually had, as a result of what was brought forward by interested in terms of public and other people with respect to the first and second public meeting, we have Phil Gerard, who has a technical memo that's added to that. That's one of the attachments to the report as it comes forward, which may be able to help give you some of that more comfort. That will be part of the package coming forward. Again, just timing didn't allow it to happen today, but that the intent was, given the concern that's happened with respect to odor and with respect to light and mitigation and the need for more technical comfort, If you recall, in January at the public meeting, there was someone who made a presentation on the fly with respect to some of those things. We wanted a little bit more belt and suspenders, if I could, provide that technical information and comfort to council to answer those questions. That has been prepared as part of the package coming forward, and I'll make sure I can share that ahead of time with council, or it will be part of the package as it comes forward in the next council meeting.
Okay, I can wait for it in the next meeting, John, if that's appropriate. I think the thing that I have concerns about is, it's one thing to say we need an engineered plan. It's another thing to ensure that we have enough fodder or hurdles or regulations within that plan, so that a plan isn't just, it can be many things. And, with regards to some of the financial backing that some of these, developments could potentially have, I mean, we've seen instances, before council in different iterations and all across, different platforms where, studies seem to certainly say what the parties involved want them to say. And I just worry about, our ability as a small rural municipality to ensure that we have that engineering criteria as specific as possible to ensure that it's actually going to accomplish and enforce and require, the engineering to actually meet, checks and balances within those studies and within those plans, so that we're not just it's not, just a token gesture of the process. It's got to have enough teeth in it that it's going to actually address and accomplish the intentions behind them. So that's where I'll be looking for, with a closer ear and eye in the next meeting to make sure that's spoken to.
I can also add, Councillor Graham, that within the official plan amendment, we are requiring that those studies are subject to the additional policies at the back of the OP, which allow the municipality to have those studies peer reviewed at the proponent's expense. So that would be sort of the belt and suspenders on that also, is that you would have an additional consultant peer review anything that the proponent submitted.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Conley, did you have anything further to add? No, you're good. Okay.
No.
Any other questions then from members of council? It's a very good discussion. If not, then motion then to receive that presentation. Got Councillor Shaw and Councillor Huntley. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
and Deputy Mayor Graham.
Deputy Mayor Graham has his audio turned off.
Just sent him a quick message. Deputy Mayor Graham, can you hear us?
Yeah, sorry about that. Just had a technical glitch. Yep.
Perfect. So you're good for that? Perfect. Wonderful.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Madam Clerk, that was 5.
Yes, it was Mayor McFadden.
Very good. Motion is approved. The next item is the item that I've declared a pecuniary interest on. So at this point, I will turn it over to Deputy Mayor Graham, and I'll turn off my camera and my microphone.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Cindy, as far as I can see, I think the mayor sort of stepped away. So with that, we can let the individuals, a part of the delegation, into the meeting. Has that been done?
Yes, through you, Deputy Mayor Graham, Mr. Fields, as well as Ms. Pierce have joined us.
Okay, well then we'll turn the floor over to the delegation. Please proceed.
Hi. Thank you for allowing us to speak. My name is Bree Pierce, and in my volunteer capacity, I'm the current president of the Millbrook and District Minor Hockey Association. I am here today with Brian Field, who volunteers as our current treasurer. Today, we would like to request that council please waive a late payment fee that has been levied against our October 2021 ICE invoice in the amount of $1,692.74, which is 10% of the total amount due. Brian has provided a copy of the canceled check and our invoices for this season, along with our delegation request that was submitted to you on March 11th, 2022. While we acknowledge that and agree that the township received the amount due late, we want to point out that we have not ever, in our time serving the membership on the board of directors, not paid an ice bill or an amount due to the Township of Cavan Monaghan. From this standpoint, we, as the volunteers of the MDMHA Board of Directors, would consider this to mean that our account is in good standing. We also want to point out that the late payment that we are referring to was deposited 6 days after it was due and posted 8 days after it was due. Those dates were December 6th and December 8th, respectively, for an amount due November 30th. We don't want to forego our own responsibility to pay our invoices on time, but we have lacked consistency until recently as to the timelines for receiving invoices. We now get an email as well as a mailed hard copy. We are in no way saying that the Township of Cavan Monaghan is responsible for the timelines in which we receive Canada Post items. We're just saying that that has contributed over the course of time into intermittent receipt. We are aware of the due dates of the invoices and they have remained consistent, but we need to know the amount owing in order to process payment. And due to being a not-for-profit organization, we require 2 signatures on every check for the protection of and the transparency to our membership. Despite advances in technology, we are unable to expedite our payment process with electronic payments. And in addition, not to blame the pandemic, but it has made it increasingly hard to achieve our obligations within the timelines needed, given the ever-changing restrictions of the pandemic. By no fault of ours or yours, in-person capacity has been restricted as well, which means it's harder for us as volunteer board members to cross paths and meet up in the community and at the community center to accomplish tasks that were easier prior to COVID-19. In closing, I would like to ask that through you, Deputy Mayor Graham, that council considers the fact that we are a volunteer, not-for-profit organization that has endured significant hardships, financial and otherwise, especially during the current and past pandemic season. And knowing this and accepting that our actions have always been in good faith, waive this substantial late fee for us. This concludes my comments, Your Worship.
Thank you, Ms. Pierce. Mr. Field, is there any comments that you intend to make as part of the delegation, or do you want me to turn it over to council for questions? Just want to make sure we get all the bases. I guess we're good.
My apologies. Yeah, no,
Oh,
I
sorry.
think we put it very succinctly. I guess the one additional comment I would make is, unlike most township billing, where, for instance, my most recent water bill was produced and sent out to me on the 11th of February to be due March 30th, giving me a window, an expanded window for payment. The ICE invoicing follows similar timelines, only it is due by the end of the same month in which the invoice is produced. So typically, in an ideal world, we're still only operating with a 2-week window to receive the invoice, prepare the check, and get payment made to the township.
Okay. Thank you for those comments. So that's before us, council. Any questions or comments from any members of council? Oh, I'm frozen. Okay, I don't see any. So I guess a couple questions. I understand. I think there's a few comments that have been made with regards to the issue, but from the discussions with staff that I've had, and I think have been shared with other members of council, this seems to be a real ongoing, recurring incident. So is there any effort? I don't know whether it's through the board or through yourself, Mr. Field, to sort of with an approach to how we're going to address this moving forward, because this is not the first time late fees have been incurred and deadlines have not been met. And, it's kind of hard to understand from a council standpoint with, there's not much been changed with how things have been operated. And we haven't seemed to been able to come up with a way of working together to prevent these sorts of lapses from occurring. And obviously the pandemic is a significant event, but surely, there has to be a way to not allow this to move forward. And I'll give you the opportunity to maybe speak to that, because I know that's been expressed to me by a number of members of council.
I think that's perhaps an unfair characterization. There was one previous time last year where a fee was reversed by the township on a late payment. It happened, and as I believe I indicated it in our delegation submission, it so happened that late last year, when things got shut down, we went back-to-back months with something that has never before occurred in my 5 years as treasurer. And that was, we were invoiced an identical amount 2 subsequent months. And because of what I will describe as perhaps some challenges in receipt of invoicing previously, I will admit that when the second invoice arrived at the exact same amount as the first invoice, I did not look carefully enough at it to see that it was in fact 2 subsequent identical invoice amounts, and set it aside. And it wasn't until Melissa kindly pointed out to me, she said, oh, by the way, you still got this. And we actually went through and reconciled the invoices. And she pointed out that no, both, I believe it was March and April amounts last year were the same. And I believe a check was delivered to the township within a day for what was an honest oversight error based on, a very unique circumstance. So to characterize it as something that has been an ongoing situation, I think is unfair. I think I also indicated in the email the dates where checks are provided extremely promptly. In fact, our invoice for this past month was paid on the 11th of the month, well in advance of the date of it being due. So it really is and has been a matter of, during the pandemic, when hockey has been placed into a shutdown position, which has happened, numerous times where we've, the OMHA has basically said cease all operations. It's been a challenge at times to get that second signature. And, I have very readily admitted, yes, the check was delivered on the 4th of December, which by all accounts is 4 days late. It was still delivered within a 30-day window of the invoice being produced and provided.
Councillor Huntley?
Through you, acting chair, I guess. Is this $1,600 or $1,700? Is this one invoice that was passed due? Because I was under the understanding that there was like 4 or 5 invoices that went past due. So,
Maybe we'll ask Ms. Polk to speak to that.
Yeah, maybe can you help clarify?
She's available.
Thank you, Council. Through you, Deputy Mayor Graham, to all of Council, there were actually 4 invoices that were late. Let me just go back a little bit on the history here for clarification. Back when the pandemic started, Council waived all penalties and interest fees on all accounts from the beginning, which was April of 2020, right through to October 31st of 2020. And then thereafter, for the hockey season, there were 3 invoices, one January 30th, one March 30th, and one April 30th. And they were all paid late. The first one on January 30th was paid on February the 25th. The one that was due on March 30th was paid June 30th, which is 3 months late. The one that was due on April 30th was paid July 30th, again, 3 months late. Due to the pandemic, the reopening, some of the difficulties there, the CAO approved a one-time write-off in July for the penalties that existed on those first 3 invoices that were late in that season. Then we now come upon a new season. We have a contract which is signed at the beginning of the season, and the contract clearly states payment method is monthly billing. It is signed. This year's contract was issued August the 24th. ICE rental costs are detailed by date and by dollar value. So of course, if something is canceled, but I understand, and the Parks and Facilities Department can speak to this, but due to the allocation of ICE, there's not many dates that are subtracted from it. However, so at the point of the contract back in August, the monthly amounts are actually known, give or take a cancellation or an addition. The monthly billing of the ICE rentals does provide a due date within 30 days and a penalty charge notice at the end of 10% on all overdue accounts. And then thereafter, there is a 10% penalty on arrears on the first of the following month. So therefore, basically, once the next season came into play, which was this year, August 24th with the contract and all the itemized details. Not only was the actual invoice in question, which was due on November 30th, issued, I believe it was around the 11th, I would have to check the date, but there are also emails from the Parks and Facilities Coordinator who also emailed it in addition to help to assist the organization in making payment on time. And that one still came in late, which of course, the record that the Mr. Field is referencing is December 4th was dropped off, and in our system showing it on December the 8th. Therefore, there was only one penalty that wasn't waived in the last 2 years. The first 3 were waived by the CAO back in July, and this is the only one that's outstanding, and it's due to the late payment that was due on November 30th, paid December.
Thank you, Ms. Pope. So I guess, so based on that, I mean, I don't want to get into this, back and forth, but it seems that there's, and pandemic has obviously been a huge hurdle, and, we appreciate that it's, especially with the closures of the facility, et cetera, it's been especially, difficult to manage for those groups that are affiliated with, the use of that facility. So it's obviously an issue. Hopefully one that we don't have next season. The other thing that I think that needs to be considered is, all of the parameters with regards to user fees are established in our user fee bylaw. And that comes before council, on an annual basis, and has already come before council this year and was approved. All of the parameters and restrictions and implications for late payments are defined in that bylaw, and it has been approved by council. So, that was been approved and revisited. So any adjustments to the 10% component, I think, should be confined to the subject of discussion with regards to that bylaw. So, it's definitely one that comes before council in the future. And if, there's implications of that, it's something that this instance can definitely something should be on top of mind for council when that bylaw does become forward. But at this time, I think with regards and having just passed that bylaw, that I think my suggestion would be that we move to receive the delegation and move forward with the existing bylaw as it is. And obviously, I'm sure that if there is opportunities for all of the restrictions or obstacles that minor hockey has with the signatures, which completely are valid and completely understand, maybe there's an opportunity to provide a solution by which we can make certain adjustments to how that processing of those checks is made and how the payments are, so that we can avoid this in the future, because it's certainly not the intention, but there needs to be a line drawn somewhere. So I'll make that motion to receive the delegation. I'm looking for a seconder.
I'll second.
Councilor Huntley, and call for a vote. Ms. Page.
Sorry, I clicked it, but I didn't click it properly. I apologize. Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
and Councillor Belch.
Yes.
That motion is approved. Thank you very much for the delegation, and all the best. Cindy, if you can allow the mayor back in and just let him know. Did we want to take a recess for a minute, or can it be done quickly?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I am ready to proceed as you're ready to proceed.
Thankfully, yes.
Okay, all right. Next item is 8.1, minutes of the regular council meeting held March 7, 2022. Motion to adopt those minutes. Deputy Mayor Graham and Councillor Belch. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes,
and Councillor Huntley.
Yes.
motion is approved. Next item, reports planning 2022-15 cabin agri-services zoning bylaw amendment. Ms. Ellis.
Mayor McFadden, members of council, planning report 2022-15 is before you today with the recommendation that bylaw number 2022-12 be approved to amend bylaw number 2018-58 as amended with regard to the lands located in part of lot 13 concession 8 of the Cavan Ward and identified by property assessment roll number 1509-010-030-18900.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Fantastic local business that's expanding. It's great to see. Any questions from members of council? Seeing none, then a motion to receive the report and accept the recommendation. Deputy Mayor Graham, Councillor Shaw, Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
and Councillor Shaw.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Ms. Ellis, thank you very much. Always exciting to see local businesses doing well and expanding their operations, and agricultural to boot. That's great to see in today's environment. Thank you. Next, item 9.2, report planning 2022-16, update status report 1066 Sire Line. Mr. Conley.
Through your worship to council, you have before you plan report 2022-16. That is an update status report with a recommendation the council receive planning report 2022-16, update status report 1066 Sire Line for information. This is a regular report that I provide to council in each cycle. We've been doing this for the last year and a bit. What I have to add today is that in addition to having the report before you, you have the 3 studies that were there: the agricultural impact assessment, the environmental impact assessment, the Hydro-G study, as well as the traffic impact study. The last couple of meetings I've been giving an update with respect to the traffic impact study. We have received the draft. In fact, we have had comment, and I can sort of revise what's in the report before council today, is that it has been received on schedule and has been reviewed by township staff and is in this point being finalized. And I expect that final version to be either later today or tomorrow. With that, we'll submit that to MTO as well as the county for their comments. With that, we'll prepare the final documents, bring this back to council in April with the idea that we would provide this, go through the normal process of a statutory public meeting. That the intent is to have that in April and then bring that forward. And again, one of the outstanding items, which was another thing that council asked before, which was also to bring forward the sale and other disposition of land bylaw. And specifically with respect to this property, we'll bring that forward as well at a subsequent meeting after that public meeting in April, with the idea of taking a look at this whole project and bringing it forward for council for a final decision. So if there are any questions, be happy to answer that.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions from members of council? If we can go back just to the timeline, just the chart, so I can confirm. Okay, so just on looking at the final items, when are we giving notice of the public meeting? Is that something that's occurring?
So that
actual dates.
Yeah, so typically in terms of what we do is we give public notices 20 days as a minimum to do that. The intention here is to try and line that up with council. What we have done, and we did this with respect to the cannabis project, is where we always use the Millbrook Times, but in other cases we'll use other local papers to make sure that we keep the 20-day timeline. So depending on when I get final comments from MTO and the county with respect to the traffic impact study, work has already begun on the staff report. We'll put out the notice for that public meeting. I think based on our schedule, we had a meeting of the project team, including senior staff, last Friday. I think the idea is to have the report in the early part of April with a public meeting, hopefully lining up on the 19th of April, which is council. And then with the idea is that we'll have that public meeting, bring it back May 2nd. So it's just outside the timeline you have before you here on the Gantt chart for a final decision. But that would not just only be the zoning bylaw and official plan amendment, but that would also be the report back with respect to options around disposal of land.
Very good. Okay, so the options report will come part of the first meeting of May. With regards to giving the statutory notice, then the notice will be going out in March?
The intention is to do that before the end of March, and the idea is to have that meeting. Again, I hesitate to look at the idea of a special council meeting, so I'm trying to line that up. But the intention here is, now that the report has been finalized, it is on the cusp of being finalized today or tomorrow. My hope is that, given some of the relationships with MTO, we can get a quick turnaround time with respect to any comments and be able to submit that in order to go forward. So my intention, again, it's still to keep it. We're slipping into May, but I'm hoping only by a couple of days.
Very good. But we don't need a council meeting in order to give the public notice?
No.
Correct. Okay, so we can still do that in March. It's not subsequent to a special meeting or the April 4th meeting?
That's correct.
Correct. Okay, good. Any other questions? We got Councillor Huntley. Go ahead.
Through you, Chair, just, not to point out the obvious, but there's only a week left of March. So
That's correct. So through your worship to Councillor Huntley, there has been peer review. All the reports that have been done have been submitted and given peer review. We have all those comments. The traffic impact study is the last one. Specifically, that is one that MTO wishes to look at, and any comments that are there, the intention would be that we would give notice of a public meeting with the idea of that happening in April. Again, 20 days notice, but that work would continue with the idea of that information going forward. So it's drafting the report, all the information that has to go forward and putting that. There may be some slippage, but at this point, I'm still sticking to the hope that we can stay to the timeline.
So that all that will be done next week, is what you're saying.
This week and next week. That's correct. It is the second day of spring. So my hope is that hope springs eternal, and that I would still be able to keep this. This has been a long time coming, and I do appreciate the frustration at council. Plus, add my own to that as well.
Excellent.
Very good. Any other questions from members of council? If not, I'll entertain a motion to receive that report. Deputy Mayor Graham, Councillor Shaw, Madam Clerk, record a vote.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
and Mayor McFadden.
Yes, motion is approved. Next item, report Public Works 2022-04 annual MECP drinking water reports. Mr. Hancock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to council. The recommendation before you is that council receive Public Works Report 2022-04 annual MECP drinking water reports for information. This is an annual report prepared. Was prepared by PUG on behalf of the township. It does go through the process of setting out all the parameters that we test for in our water. And you'll see the tables that show that we had no exceedances in that area. It also, on the last 2 pages, it sets out the volumes of water that we have used at each of the wellheads. And I think the last page of the report is the most important, where it says that we had no failures to meet requirements of the Safe Drinking Water Act through the year. There were no failures to meet the requirements of the municipal drinking water license, and that there were no provincial orders issued against the township for our wells. I think the other interesting part is the volumes, and it's something that we've talked about before, but it does list on the page 71, I guess, and it happens to be page 2 of the report I'm looking at, but page 71, the agenda. It talks about the average daily amount of water being used. It talks about the maximum daily amount, and it talks about peak flows. And generally, our maximum daily is not reaching half of what is permitted to be taken under our permit to take water. So we have a good supply of water available. The peak flows, there was a couple of exceedances in that area, and that happened because of maintenance on the system by flushing and by winter maintenance, things of that item. But generally, the report speaks to the system working very well, and that the water quality is very good. So with that, I look forward to any questions from council.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Hancock. And before we get started, I just want to say thank you. We all look forward, and we've missed your smiling and infectious personality around the discussions, Wayne. So welcome back. You've been sorely missed by all of us, and it's good to see your smiling face on the other side of the monitor. So welcome back, Wayne.
I do appreciate that, and I hate to say it, but I miss these council meetings.
On behalf of all of us, I thank you, Wayne, and welcome back.
Thank you.
I do have a question just for comparison's sake, and I certainly don't expect an answer today. I'm sorry if I get off guard. Have we found that these numbers, because I don't see the comparator, have we found that these numbers were higher now than pre-COVID? In other words, the amount of time that people are necessarily spending at home, have you seen an increase in those numbers relative to pandemic levels?
Well, I think, again, I probably should speak to more of the water billing side, but I think we found that during COVID that we did have more people working from home, and that we did have more water usage in some locations. But while we had that happening, a lot of the commercial entities and whatnot were not using the volume. So generally, I think your volumes were up maybe on the residential side and down on some of the other sides.
Very good. Thank you. And you did answer the question. I wasn't even expecting that today was a takeaway, but thank you. That was good. I got Councillor Shaw and then Councillor Huntley. Go ahead, Councillor Shaw.
Yes, I was just looking at this, and the peak that we saw, the 1739 liters per minute, if that were to be achieved on a regular basis, is that sustainable?
Well, I think there's 2 points there. Our maximum daily amount is 3,000 cubic meters per day. And you'll notice that our volumes don't actually reach half of that, while the peak flows, the peak is at 1,500. And that means to me that we probably would look at an adjustment on your peak flows that are allowed per minimum. I think that's where you are. The 17 and the 15 were noted in the report as being above what's allowed on our peak flow limit per liters per day, but the peak flow limit doesn't necessarily match the 3,000. So I think that's something that we need to review with the ministry and look at our water taking permit, because I think the 1,500 should go higher. I think it should be up to 2,500, that type of thing. And I think that would ensure that we're meeting what we should be. There's lots of volume of water in the wells, so I don't think there's an issue there. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, that's a perfect answer. That's what I was hoping for.
Thank you, Mr. Hancock. Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Councillor Huntley, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, to Mr. Hancock. A couple questions for you. One being, I guess, or Mayor McFadden kind of alluded to it, was it would be interesting to see, last year's numbers versus the year before numbers, kind of see the trend in these numbers and see what they're doing, like, and kind of correlate them with, what's going on, whether it's, work at home from COVID or population growth or what have you. But the trend in those numbers, I think, would be a good story. Like, we could see what's going on.
Yeah, I think we can do that for you. I think it would come more from the billing, but I think we can do an information report to show that, just to give you an idea what was happening. Because you have a period of 2 years there where things weren't not the norm. So you did have volumes that were unusually high in some locations and volumes that were low, but I think we can do that as an information report for sure.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. And I guess the other question I had was the water quality testing. Like, is it only done at the wellhead itself, or is it done throughout the system at different points?
Well, you'll notice in the report we have the wellhead, what they call raw water samples, and then we have also what they call a distribution. So we have points in the system where we have tap locations where they actually take samples off the line. So we do test the water as it goes through the distribution line. So we have the tests at each of the raw wells. We have the distribution. You'll see the number of 208 tests that we've done on the distribution system. So they are set. There are certain points. I think you've heard people say they've seen these funny little blue pipes. There's one on Baxter Creek there. I think there's one up in Gravel Road. They're at different locations. We usually also try and keep them near the ends of the mains that are dead ends to make sure that the water is of good quality in those locations. So there is testing done on the distribution system itself.
Okay. Excellent answer. Thank you, Mr. Hancock.
Very good. Any further questions? Members of council? Councillor Huntley, would you be comfortable if we just had the clerk? I'd be interested in, for example, like the last 3 or 4 years of this same report, just to go through myself to take a look at it. I don't think I really need the director of public works to go through and coordinate all this into a spreadsheet. I'm fine with just reviewing the previous reports as long as council is fine with that. I just want to see the trends and take a look at it.
Well, through you, Mayor, I'm fine going back and looking for it, but I think going forward, when these reports come forward, I think that trend should be included with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, we can do that. And I think once we've got those 3, then they can take that into consideration when Mr. Hancock brings them forward next year. But I would like to go through that information. If I could maybe just request the clerk sends that to the members of council, just link to the previous year's water reports, just so we can have a look and see. And if you could include whatever, almost lose track, it's 2 years ago, but the year prior to the COVID, as well as the 2 during, and then this current, however that works out, whatever that, I don't know whether that's 3 or 4 years for reports, but I will leave that in the competent hands of our clerk.
Through Mayor McFadden, we will work together with Mr. Hancock to make sure that we get that circulated to you guys.
Perfect. Excellent. Okay. Motion then to receive that report. We've got Deputy Mayor Graham and Councillor Shaw. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Through Mayor McFadden, just for clarification to Councillor Huntley, we don't need to add that. That's just something you want us to include moving forward. You don't need that included in the motion. Staff's clear on that direction.
If staff is clear on it, then we're good. But if you want a motion to that effect, I'm more than willing to make the motion.
How do you feel, Mr.?
I think we're clear on it. I think he
Perfect.
just asked that when we're bringing this report, we attach previous years to it, I believe is what we're being asked.
Not quite.
Moving forward,
Okay.
you just include it in the same table to make it full, so you can see that it's just from a glance. This year is totally fine. We'll just review the previous reports, just maybe moving forward. And then you've got, once you started that table, moving forward will be simple. You just add a new column and drop one off.
I see. Okay.
But nothing for this year. That'll be for next year.
Very good.
Excellent. Madam Clerk, you clear on that amendment to the motion, and Ms. Councillor Shaw and Deputy Mayor Graham, you're okay with that modification? Yep, very good. Okay.
Absolutely.
To be
Madam Clerk,
fair, Mayor
record the vote.
McFadden, I did not hear what you said. You completely chopped out. So if the rest of council heard that, and that's wonderful, I apologize, I did not. So ultimately, it's just a comparative chart moving forward. And then we're going to give you the historical information.
Now, yes.
Now, okay. I'm comfortable with that. If everybody else is, we can finalize that motion. Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Next item, CAO report and capital status with Ms. Hurley. Anybody have any questions on capital status reports? It's not on the list, but just so that it's on the radar, I have had conversations with Ms. Hurley, but I don't know whether you wish to formally add it to this list. Is at the county, they're going to do a future DC discussion relative to infrastructure projects within Cavan Monaghan. And so I know where we're going to have that conversation, but I just want to make sure it's identified on here as one of the things that we're working on, and we can certainly provide that update. But we're looking for items within Cavan Monaghan, which would be deemed as appropriate for development charges to be captured within the county framework. So if there's any members of council that have any specific items they wish to bring forward, certainly let Ms. Hurley know, and there will be something further coming forward in advance of a county meeting that is yet to be set up. Ms. Hurley, you're okay with that?
Actually, yes, through you, Mr. Chairman, I will be adding that onto the list but we just spoke about that earlier today.
Yep.
That is correct.
This falls under all the items that you are working on in the background. I just like to make sure that they're identified up front to remind people of how full your plate continues to be and how many items we continue to add to it.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I could actually add a little bit more than what's before you today.
Do you want to add a few more on here just so people are aware of what you're working on?
We might update that list so that council has a complete report and capital status to them at the next meeting, but I'll go through everything.
Okay. Excellent, very good. Any other questions for Ms. Hurley? Any other random items to throw onto her list? Seeing none, you're safe. Okay, motion to receive that. We got Councillor Belch and Councillor Huntley. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
and Councillor Belch.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Next item, Council Committee verbal reports. Councillor Belch.
Nothing to report at this time. Both March 17th meetings were canceled.
Very good.
One for the Ganaraska, and the other was revitalization, downtown revitalization.
Very good. Councillor Huntley.
Through you, Chair, I guess with Orca, I guess news will break fairly soon that Dan Marino has submitted his retirement letter, and he is going to step down from Orca. So there's a job opening in your future if you want to apply there, Mayor.
Thanks for that heads up, Councillor Huntley.
No problem.
We send Dan our best. Any other items outstanding? I guess Councillor Belch has already covered off the Mr. Hack.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Deputy Mayor Graham.
Nothing to report. The next Miller Valley Trail meeting is next Monday.
Very good. With regards to an update from the library, they would just like council to be aware that they are working closely and will be in contact with Ms. Pope to ensure that when Ms. Pope brings forward our quarterly updates on budget, that they will, and they're still figuring out whether it'll be part of or an additional report and how that's going to work in the logistics, but they would like to bring forward at the same time an updated status report on the library budget, which will include how much money has been spent in the various items and the percentages, similar to this format that Ms. Pope uses for all of her other budgetary purposes. So I think that's a positive step forward, so we can understand as the year progresses, as opposed to once a year where the budget's been and what has and hasn't been spent. So provide council with a quarterly opportunity to inquire about questions on their budget items. And that's my update. Anything else? Any members of council? If not, a motion then to receive those updates. Oh, hold on. I see Ms. Page took her mic off. Did you wish to add something?
No, Mayor McFadden, it was just to avoid any feedback when I called the vote.
Okay, sorry. Motion to receive that. Got Councillor Shaw and Councillor Belch. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
and Councillor Huntley.
Yes.
Motion is approved. There is no general business. Any correspondence for information anybody wishes to bring forward? Seeing none. Correspondence for action, there is none. Into bylaws then. Bylaw number 2022-12 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 2018-58 as amended, otherwise known as the Township of Cabamonigan zoning bylaw. Be read a first, second, third time, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the corporate seal attached thereto. Moved by Councillor Huntley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Graham. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Shaw.
A promotion already? Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham and then Councillor Shaw. I combined those together. I apologize. Sorry about
Rushing
that.
us out.
Deputy Mayor
I
Graham
will-
is first,
Yes.
and then Councillor Shaw. I apologize. I don't know
Yes.
how I combined that all together in one.
My, how time flies.
Very good. Motion was unanimously passed by all 7 votes.
Sorry.
Our next item, there's no unfinished business. Any notices of motion? Seeing none. Confirming bylaw being bylaw number 2022-13 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the meeting held March 21st, 2022 be read a first, second, third time, signed by the mayor and the clerk and the corporate seal attached thereto. Moved by Councillor Belch, second. Deputy Mayor Graham, Madam Clerk, recorded vote for just 5 of us this time.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
and Mayor McFadden.
Yes, motion is approved. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Shaw and Councillor Huntley. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Mayor McFadden,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
and Deputy Mayor Graham.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Upcoming events, we have Millbrook Valley Trails Advisory Committee meeting on Monday, March 29th at 5 o'clock via Zoom. Next regular council meeting is April 4th, 2022 at 1 p.m. via Zoom. And Millbrook Downtown BIA Board of Management meeting is Thursday, April 7th at 8 a.m. via Zoom. Thanks, everybody.